Knicks Nation, what's going on? SB community. Welcome back to Sheer Brilliance Knicks. We had a terrible loss last night. It was a bad loss. It was a loss. Knicks lost their fifth straight 115 to 122. I really wanted to look at Thibs' reaction. This is going to be a new segment called Thibs Translator. And I'm going to be Thibs' translator. I think it's just important to kind of look at how he viewed the game to make sure that we're not all delusional, that I'm not just blindly following and in agreement with what the coach is looking at and how he sees ultimately what unfolded in terms of the game. We're going to do this for the first time. We're going to listen to Thibs, interpret Thibs, and then add my thoughts. The first question that was asked connects to no defensive obstruction and whether or not that was a problem for the game.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head. The ball was in the paint the whole night. He in 38 points first quarter. So they shot a high percentage. They out-rebounded us. And then it was too little, too late at the end.
I really like how Thibs answered the question. So for the most part, he just talked about how easily they were able to penetrate in this game and get the ball to the basket. He looked at it and he just said simply they had high percentage shots. It was too little, too late. I think we came out missing shots and they came out missing shots. And you know, with a team like that, who knows they're not as good as the other team, who knows that they've been struggling for a while, but that smells blood in the water, the Knicks should have known right away. You got to hop on this team early, put up a good score, and you can't get them no confidence. Because if they feel, oh, y'all terrible too, and they put 2 or 3 buckets together as a young team, then it's going to be off to the races. And you already know you're coming off of a high energy, high emotion, very tough loss. So that's not good news. And that's exactly what happened. They got out to enough of a lead where we were playing comeback for the rest of the game. So that ain't always good. So let's go on to the next question. Does your loss of 2 of your 3 scorers contribute to this outcome? And let's hear what Thibs has to say.
Well, that's part of it. Like but you still, we scored 115 points. That's enough. And, we talk about what goes into winning in the defensive part, defense, rebounding, and low turnovers. That puts you in position to win. And so everyone's capable of playing defense. Everyone's capable of rebounding. Everyone's capable of taking care of the ball, right? So, when you're down players, your margin of error is smaller, but the intensity, if we do those other things, if we do those things as a team, we can beat anyone. So we have to understand how important that is, particularly when you're shorthanded.
I love Thibs' response to this question as well. He basically said, we scored 115 points. So obviously scoring isn't a problem. He talked about the intensity that you need to bring. And obviously if you have players who have certain roles on the team and they play certain positions and they offer different contributions to the team, that changes when you have injuries and players out. You just have to step up. And he talked about it. He said, no matter who you are, whether you're a regular part of the rotation, if you get minutes, whenever you're on the floor, there's 3 things that is expected of you. First, that you have to have defensive intensity. Second, that you have to rebound intensively. And third, you got to keep turnovers low. It's always a next man up mentality with Thibs. And usually that's what you'll see with the players that he coaches as well. It's next man up. So basically, he's not making excuses. He talked about, or he didn't talk about, I'm going to say it. We still have relatively young players in terms of their experience in these situations. So it is a learning process. If we're talking about Thibs and his expectation of next man up, we saw that in Chicago when Derrick Rose got injured. And he had a Taj Gibson, he had a Kirk Heinrich, he had a Nate Robinson, and he had Joakim Noah, who continued to win because they fully believed what coach was teaching. And secondly, they always played with energy and desire. Where we kind of fell short was this was a game we should have won. As long as we had Julius. Julius is a player that could have been the best player on the floor last night. Technically, his numbers said that he was the best player on the floor last night. So he should have been the difference maker that galvanized the rest of the team and helped us gut out this victory. In order to do so, you can't always do it with your scoring, and you can't always do it by telling people, let's go, let's get together. They need to be shown, or your teammates need to be shown, how you separate from everybody else on the floor. And that is on a defensive end, that's on the offensive end, and that's doing the little things, whether it was fatigue or whatever have you. We didn't see that from Julius. And that's where attitude reflects leadership. I'll tell you this much. If Julius was the one that was injured and out, and Jalen Brunson was the one that was healthy and in during this game, we would have won this game. And it's not because Jalen Brunson is a defensive juggernaut. It's because Jalen Brunson, with his mentality and his ability to hit timely baskets and set a tone offensively, and his energy and his swagger, we would have willed ourselves to this win. Because that type of energy, we've clearly seen it this early in the season, is infectious. And that's one thing that Julius has been trying to work on, but it has to be natural to you. It has to be natural to you. You have to come in and hit clutch buckets when needed. You have to be able to break the will of the other team or remind players that you are the best player on the floor right now. And it's something that Randall couldn't do last night. But I'm a firm believer that it's something that Brunson would have done if he was in there last night. So we got to look at that. But whoever's on the floor, you got to play defense with intensity. You have to rebound the basketball, and you got to keep the turnovers low. Case in point. Points in the paint. They ask about points in the paint, and they also talk about Mitch Rob and the fact that the other team was able to score too easily. All right, so let's see what Thibs says.
And again, I want to look at the film before I comment further on it, but you can't win if, I want to give them credit. They played really hard and they played well, but I didn't think that we had the necessary, our defense has to be tied together, right? And the ball was getting into the paint too easily, so we got to fix that.
Listen, no excuses. He said the ball was getting into the paint too easily. We got to be tied together. And there is no excuse for that. And 100% I agree. Once again, Thibs is making sense. Basically what he's calling, and this is what he's saying in the huddle. You can't literally push people in position. It has to start with your best players on the floor. And it could be your best players on the floor on the offensive end or the defensive end. And this is on Mitch. Mitch talked about holding his teammates accountable and not being the nice guy and telling people where they needed to be. Mitch just looked gassed last night. He looked like he could never really get his legs under him. He looked like he may have been fatigued or sore or whatever have you, and I don't doubt all of that. But once again, these are NBA players, and you're going to have these games. And that's what makes players such as Kobe Bryant really special, because it does become a mind over matter type of situation. And I know I'm always providing excuses, but this is another step that you have to take as you move up levels. And for Mitch to reach the levels that he's trying to go to, you have to will yourself through this. You have to recognize what's happening in real time. That this team is running up and down the floor, and no matter what bumps and bruises we're fighting through, you need to be able to pull your best player in. At that time, Julius has been getting double-doubles on the rebounds. Mitch has been getting double-doubles on the rebound. It got to start with y'all two. And then you got to pull your New York Giants in. And what I mean by New York Giants, your other centers. You got to pull Jericho in, Hartenstein. Anybody that's getting playing time, you got to let them know, listen, we getting work right now. They're coming in and getting layups and doing whatever. If we need to put some bodies on the floor, let's put some bodies on the floor just to let them know or think twice about penetrating and getting to the basket. You can't have them coming in doing layup drills on you, right? I know it's not the 90s, but I don't care. Still, you need to let them feel you if they're driving to the basket, all right? So once again, I think Thibs is spot on. He was just like, listen, we got to be tied in. We got to play defense on a string, and they got into the lane. They got into the paint. too easily and too often last night. And that was a key to that victory. I think the last question Thibs addressed, the reporter seems as if they were trying to insinuate why Fournier doesn't get more playing time. But the comment was about Fournier and his performance on the minutes. And let's hear what Thibs has to say.
It's a credit to him. He's a true pro, and it's not easy, and it's not easy for Derek either. And so, but that's what being a professional is, and that's what the expectation is.
Once again, I think Thibs does a great job of sidestepping. He sidestepped that question. He did the Euro step on that question. But for the most part, it's a couple of things that stands out about Thibs' response. He's basically saying, Fournier is a pro. And he mentioned just like Rose is a pro, and I'm sure he's going to throw in there Cam. This is what it is. The coach, in order to be a leader of the team, everybody's not going to be happy. The leader of the team is going to have to make some difficult decisions. And once you have to make those difficult decisions, you do have to change according to changes that take place. But you have to stand firm in your decisions, all right? And that's one thing that I give credit to Thibs for, all right? Now, adjustments from time to time must be made. So I give you that as well. But when you make a tough decision, you have to learn how to stick with it, no matter the pressures you get from the outside looking in. As long as the decision that you've made, you've been able to place yourself in a position to still be able to win in accordance to the decision that you made. If it just doesn't make sense, then that's on Leon. Make the change. But if you put a leader in place, you have to be able to live with the outcomes of their decisions. That's at the end of the day. And so when he answered that, he said Fournier is being a pro. And that's the expectation of him, to be a professional, to understand that this is how this game is. All right? So he did keep it at that. And I tell you this much, a lot of us has opinions on Thibs and if he's the right coach or he needs to be fired, etc. I keep telling you, my following of Thibs and respect for what he does and how he's doing it, that's not solely because of the Knicks feel-good situation. It's literally being in leadership moments. It's literally seeing it through a leadership lens where you can't please everybody all of the time. And most of the time, you're going to have people who are upset at you if you're doing it the right way. Follow other teams. Listen to other teams. Even in Chicago, right now, their biggest thing is that Donovan, their coach Donovan, Billy Donovan, he's not firm enough. Everything they're asking for, they constantly refer back to Thibs. So sometimes we don't know what we have until we don't have it anymore. When you have a coach like Mike D'Antoni, when he's all offense and it's free flowing and everybody is good and everybody's going to touch the ball, then we say, New York is known for defense. We need somebody for defense. So it's almost like anytime you have an organization with a coach, it's one extreme or another. It's never a perfect combination or match unless you have a situation such as Boston when they won their championship, where you have a defensive coach such as Thibs on staff. Now, Coach Thibs may not lead us to the promised land, but is he the right person for the development of these young pieces? That's what I'm arguing. So his response to that question about Fournier leads me to believe that that's how the organization sees Thibs. He's not going to get to the promised land, which is a championship with this team. His job that he's tasked with is developing the foundation for these young players. Y'all was asking all this time, get these veterans out of here, play the kids. This is what's happening right now. And it's not going to equate to wins. It's going to equate to development. You can't look at the outcomes. You can't look at the numbers. We weren't expecting to win titles this year. I expected to win 45 games, and I was standing firm on it. But the important piece that's happening is the development of these young players. Thibs may or may not be here the following season, But these players will have had that experience, and they will have played for a defensive-minded, hard-driving coach, so that whatever next coach they play for, that's one less thing they have to do. The coach's responsibility for the next coach that'll come into New York is to take this team no less Eastern Conference Championship, NBA championships. All right? This is the process. This is why I laugh at people on Twitter who talk about, oh, where those positive stands for the Knicks. It's not even about the positive. It's about understanding a 5-year to 10-year plan. It's about understanding levels and whether or not you're hitting your benchmarks and your markers to reach your end goal. That's what it's all about. All right? So my Thibs translator on that, I think he was spot on. He sidestepped. He did the Euro step, Fournier. He's a professional. That's what I expect from him. But as a leader, in terms of Thibs, tough decisions are going to have to be made. All right? And he's firm in his decisions, and I respect it.
Assists the other night, and 34 tonight, 36 career high points, and he's played 90-something minutes last game. What you've seen from him?
Yeah, and again, I don't get wrapped up in the individual. I look at what the team does, and that's the important. How do you impact the team? And so we didn't play well, and the numbers when you don't win don't mean anything to me.
Man, spot on. So that last question was asked to Thibs about his reaction to a couple of the players having big statistical performances. I think they may have talked about Quickly and probably Julius, because Julius had a monster game in terms of statistics. And that's exactly where we need to be. He said, stats don't mean nothing if we don't win. And I love that response too, because he's basically saying, like, I'm keeping the main thing. Are we securing the win? There was pretty good stats that came out of the Dallas game, but at the end of the day, the only stats that mattered was that W in the column for Dallas. You know what I mean? And the loss in the column for us. So the numbers mean nothing. So for me to hear that from the coach, that shows that he's in the right mindset that I need our coach to be in. And to pass that to players, because in today's day and age, not even in today's day and age, any year, when you have young players, it's all about their numbers, because their numbers will get them their contracts. But unless you're about winning, then that's when you have to push it's not about your numbers. We may have you starting, but your role is to play defense. It's about understanding what your roles are, and are you doing your job? Are you doing your job? Do your job and we'll be in good shape. Where it does matter is if you're a superstar. And we saw that with Luka, and that loss a couple of days ago, where he came in and he dropped 60 points, 20 rebounds, whatever that was on him. But he needed to do that to take over. When it became more about me than we, is when you have the skill set to will your team through your performance to get that victory. And right now we don't have that. So it has to be a team effort. It has to be a team effort. And you can't worry about your stats until we got that W. So that's the Thibs translator. Ultimately, this is what I'm going to say. All of those people who have whatever smoke you have for Tom Thibodeau, all right? I can't argue that. If you are from a statistical standpoint, or you're knowledgeable and you're viewing the game, that, we all see it differently. My thing is, in terms of what Tom Thibodeau is teaching and how he's assessed the game after the game, look, he's spot on. There's nothing that I can argue. This was a win we should have won. There's a couple of fingers can be pointed all over the place, But ultimately, at the end of the day, the team is learning how to navigate an NBA season and learning how to win. And you have the majority of the people that are in your lineup are the players that, if you make no major moves, will be the players that you're moving forward with. But I'm going to also say this. These moments of frustration that we're absolutely seeing from fan base on Twitter and people's responses, and we had the high of the 8-game winning streak, and now it's the 5-game losing streak and it's completely wiped out any of the feeling and the goodwill. All right, all of that, I understand. But keep in mind, we're in the middle of that trade window. Trade deadline is in February. This is window shopping right now. So for those of you who may be asking, well, we need to see more Cam, we need to see more whoever. Listen, you risk the possibility of those players who are trade assets getting injured. All right? You got to ask yourself, and I know part of the frustration is not knowing what direction that we're moving in. But it's not for us to know right now. We have to watch and see what the outcomes are and let the chips fall where they may. Because you don't know if you're trying to protect those assets from getting injured. But now that our team got injured, do we have to use them? We never know what ultimately the vision is until it unfolds. So in the meantime, you can control what you can control. Continue to support this team and see what happens. But in my opinion, we'll really know where we are once All-Star break hits. Because after All-Star break hits and all the players know that this is where they're going to be for the rest of the season, then that's when you see how players are going to respond to your team and whether or not we're going to hit this stretch run and make a push for the play-in or the playoffs, and then that cohesiveness takes place. So everybody, when you're responding on a game-to-game basis and you're high and low on your emotion, that emotional roller coaster stuff, man, that's just crazy. It's just crazy to me. All right? And that's because I have the end game in mind. So folks, tell me what you think. We're going to do this pretty much for every game. Just have a Thibs translator type of approach until the end of the season, or until Thibs is not here. Then we're going to have the translator for whatever coach takes his place and just see where it goes. But it was bad loss. You can get the feel very early on that once San Antonio hit a couple of shots, their confidence was up and that the Knicks weren't ready for it, And we just hope we get a victory next game. All right? So let me know what you think. Put your comments below. Do you have any parting thoughts on Thibs and me as Thibs' translator? What was I off on? What was I spot on? All right? Folks, keep in mind, same thing applies to our team as applies to our lives. If there is no struggle, there's no progress. Keep supporting the SB Knicks channel, and I'll see you soon. Peace.